Hello, welcome. Good evening. Hi, I'm the inappropriate quilter, Zaza, and I'm hoping you can hear me. Okay. Tonight, trying to get this, you can see, I'm going to be doing a sewing machine mat, which is fairly basic, but I thought that's, seeing as we're doing a series on sewing room accessories, that's a good one to start with. So I'm just going to say hello to everybody. Michelle was first, as she usually is, about 3 hours ago. And there's Nikki. Nikki, I hope you finished folding your laundry and you're not still doing it. Good evening. Hi, Joyty. Hi, Mary. Mary G is in the house. That's what I always want to say when I see Mary's name, Mary G. Danelle's here. Hi, Danelle. Jessica's here with her new name. It's me, Jessica Lee. Heather's here. Hi, Heather. Heather's the debt-free quilter. It's her Spectacle of Scraps quilt that I've done a few weeks. Dawn's here. Hi, Dawn. Good, I'm glad you can hear me, because when I started to speak, Joyty, it said, your mic's muted, and it always sends me into a bit of a panic. Hi, Candice, good to see you. Hi, Tasha. Hi, Terry. Hi, Linda, Irish Sail Lady. Hi, Misty. Hi, Diana. Nikki's still folding. Oh, no, Nikki, that's a lot of laundry you've been folding. Brenda's here. Hi, Brenda. Yoga and Quilts. Hi, Kathy. I see, Tasha, that's funny, because still drinking coffee at this hour. I used to drink coffee before I went to bed at night, and it never stopped me sleeping. So that's, I'll give it a minute or so and see anybody else comes in before I properly start. Hello, thank you for joining me tonight, and welcome everybody. It's good to see you all here. And I don't know if my glasses are needing cleaned. I'm needing to get my eyes retested. The reading bit on the bottom, which is clear, is probably needing a prescription in it now. So what's the weather like where everybody is? Because you've been having some pretty atrocious weather in the US. Not that we've been having great weather here. Hi, Eva. Hi, Brian. But the weather over there's been cold in places that aren't normally cold and things. So I've already quilted some of this, not done all of it. I meant to do all of it, but you know, that's me. Inappropriate and unprepared. So if you can see on this camera, I've just done a crosshatch quilt on this. It's a fat quarter, and it's got some fairly thin batting in between. And I've got another bit that's under the sewing machine that I haven't finished. It's going to be for the pocket. And I quite like the pocket to be quilted, because if you're putting scissors and things in it and it's not quilted, it's up to yourself. But I would at least put interfacing between the layers on the pocket. Yeah, Mickey, you don't do cold. And I've got this for the binding, which has just got, it's sort of stitches and things, different stitches. I don't know how well you can see that on that camera, because it's tiny from here. The bit that I can see, that you can see, is about that size. It's about 1 inch square. Hi, Sheila. So I need to finish quilting the bit for the pocket, and then we'll I'll trim them up. Heather, most people just say rain. We've had wet, sleety rain here, and I don't like that. Terry's got snow. I don't mind driving in the snow if I'm the first car in it and it's fresh. I don't like driving it when there's been lots of cars driving in it and there's like rut marks in it and things. I can't see if that's rain or snow you're supposed to get tomorrow, Diana. The symbol is too tiny. So I'm going to move this camera over. So I'm going to move it just now. If you get motion sickness, shut your eyes. Right, there we go. And I'm just quilting this. It doesn't take long because I've increased my stitch length for the quilting. So the machine, when you've got bigger stitches, it gives you, it always gives me a fright when I first start sewing because it goes so fast with the bigger stitches. So this should only take me a few minutes. I was going to have it all done and trimmed, and then I thought that's pointless because if somebody hasn't done this before, they're not going to know how to get to this stage. So, and I'm just going to go the other way now. I usually sort of start in the middle and then work out to both sides. And yes, I do the forbidden thing that they tell you not to do. I do draw my grid with a friction pen and touch wood. Something wood, touch wood. I haven't had any problems with them so far. But I do always test my pen before I start drawing on the fabric that I'm using. But I mean, this isn't a fast stitch I've got selected. A fast stitch speed I've got selected. But because it's a bigger stitch, it rattles through it really quickly. So hopefully I won't be at this too long. But sewing machine mats are a really quick and simple thing to make. If your sewing machine's noisy, it really helps because it cuts down with the noise and it helps with the vibrations. A lot of people like using rubber sort of yoga mat type things for they work too. But this is quite nice if you're making yourself or for somebody as a gift. Sewing room accessories, it's quite a nice gift for somebody that sews. I've made a few sewing room accessory sets for people that sew. I haven't made any for me, which is kind of typical of people that make and sew. They tend not to often do things for themselves and make things for other people. I'll just have a quick look at the chat and see if I've missed anything. Hi, Mona. I'm making a sewing machine mat tonight, which you could probably make in your sleep. Oh, Sheila was at a cross-stitch class today. How did that go, Sheila? It sounded like a good day. Oh, Eva, that's cold. -13 degrees centigrade. I don't mind when it's cold like that if the sun is shining, bizarrely. My kids call me the lizard because I said I'm solar powered, and they're not really wrong. Hi, Joyce. Because I don't mind when it's cold if the sun's shining. It's when it's a grey, dark, dull day that I don't like it. The other year we had -15 here, and it was a bit chilly, but you kind of felt it was healthy cold because it was a dry cold. Whereas often here we get a damp cold, and I hate damp weather when it's like that. So there's that side's halfway done already. But you could quilt, I mean, you don't have to really quilt it too much. But you could do straight lines, you could do, them vertically, you could do horizontally, you could do a meander, you could do what you like. I kind of go for the easy option and do it quite like a cross hatch. It's quite forgiving. It's quite a nice pattern. But you definitely want to increase your stitch length when you're quilting. If you keep it, you want your stitch length increased when your layers are thicker. And I can't remember who I saw that said that, and it made such a huge difference to my quilting because nobody had ever mentioned stitch length when doing any type of quilting. But it stands to reason that the needle and the thread have to go through more layers of fabric. So a bigger stitch is going to achieve that and stop you having skipped stitches and things. So these lines aren't perfect. There's quite a few of them that are a bit wonky, but they'll be good enough. There's sometimes when I'm like, things have to be really particular and neat, and there's other times when I really didn't give a hoot. And once the pen disappears, which fingers crossed it does disappear tonight after me saying that, then because I've used pink thread on pink fabric, you won't really see much at all. I've got the iron on, and I'll move this down here out the way, and I'll bring this over here, and I'll move the camera. I'm going to move the camera again, everybody. Hi, Melanie. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hello, good evening, and welcome. I hope I've not missed anybody. I don't think so. No, I don't have a walking foot on it. I've just got a standard foot on it. And it does, I do have, I know what you mean, like a built-in walking foot. It does have that, and I've not got that on either. I'm just doing a standard stitch. Lazy. No, it's not Ruby Star. It's a Moda fabric from several years ago. And I was looking for a bit that had, because it's a fat quarter bundle, I was looking for a bit that had selvage edge on it. And when I move over to the cutting table, I will try and find a bit. that's got the selvage edge on it. To see there's the ink lines disappearing just like magic. And it's a wool batting that I've got in between, but it's a thin wool batting. I think it's actually 80-20 wool cotton, but it's not, you can see it's not a thick batting at all. There we go, that's all vanished, and then you can't really, there's not a lot to see. Right. But yeah, it's Moda from a few years ago. I'll take it over and I'll take you with me over to my cutting table. And I'm going to lift you up and walk this way. And I'll trim these up. You really just want to try and get the biggest piece of that. Oh, that made a nice farty noise, didn't it? I wouldn't have squidged it across the table if I'd known it was going to make a noise like that. There we go. And you'll see Norman made these for me. He got a piece of one of his friends as a joiner, and I asked him if he would make me some clappers. So he got a bit of offcut from a nice oak worktop. So I've got a set of clappers. So there's that one, which is, measure the size, 10 inches by 1, 2, 3, 3.5. There's this one, which is a big one, which is 12.5 inches by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12.5 by 6. There's this little one. And then there's this huge one, which is 12.5 inches square, which is going to be great for doing big blocks. Because I hate if you're doing a whole block and you want it really flat with a clapper and you've only got a clapper this size. So all I had to buy for these, because he got the worktop free from his joiner friend who cut it, you can see the saw marks, and it's been sanded. All I had to do was buy the handles, and I got just plain, I'm not going to do it on the heavy one, these plain cast iron handles, which I thought were quite nice. So all those clappers, I think, cost me the 1, 2, 3, 4. I had one handle, so there's one odd handle, but the 4 handles were £2 something each. So under $10 for all 4. So that's not bad. Hi, KD Chris. Mona, to be honest, I don't have room for a feather either. I don't have any room. I'm going to have to put a shelf up to try and store them somewhere. But they do make a difference, I've noticed, when I have used them to my quilt blocks. So, and the one I had wasn't very big. So I'm just going to straighten this up. I was going to look and see if I can find a bit with the selvage. Here's other bits of the fabric. Try and find a bit that's got a selvage edge. Nope. These are one of the things that I did remember when I was getting the fabric out. And then, of course, as usual with my squirrel brain, I forgot. So I must remember and write down the name of that. Oh, here it is. It's Paper and Cloth. So Wonderful by Paper and Cloth from Moda Fabrics. But that's from a few years ago. So Wonderful by Paper and Cloth. And it's a Moda one. So I'm just going to square this up as best I can. Undo. If I get one square edge, then I can do everything from that square edge. I probably need to trim that edge down a bit, but it will make it easier for squaring everything up. It's amazing the difference when you get the edges squared. How neat it looks when you get all this scabby quilting bit off the edges. This is quite good because this is a multi-directional print. Well, sort of multi-directional. It's not bad. There is a sort of up and down, but you can have it. There's bits going left and right, and whichever, if you had it horizontally, there would be a top and a bottom, and if you had it vertically, there would be a top and a bottom, if that makes sense. But you can have it horizontally or vertically. That's what I'm trying to say. There are options. So I'm just going to just check this first one I cut is. It is a bit squint. I thought it was a bit squint. So there we go. Nice squared off edges. Why does it always end up with threads? I hate threads. Always hate having threads on things. And I get covered in threads as well, and I don't like that either. Now my nose is itching. Granny always used to say that as if you were going to be angry. Well, he did ask his friend for if he got any worktop cut-offs about probably 3 months ago. But normally what happens if... Because his friends are joining Fitz Kitchens. And I would do it if I was paying all that money for solid oak worktops. That if there was the bit cut out for my sink, I'd be saying it, you can give me that as a chopping board or a worktop saver or something. I've paid for it, I'd be wanting it. However, these people didn't want that one, so it's taken that long to get one. And I need to check the size of this before I trim the other bit. And we get away with just taking the tiniest little bit off. this side. Straighten that up. So this pocket now, that's probably a bit big for a pocket. I might cut that down. What is it measuring? I think it's about 6 inches. Oh, that's what you'd eat. 7 inches. I just cut a strip off because I wasn't sure how far down to have to trim it. I think I probably want it maybe 6 inches for the pocket. I'll trim that down a bit. Get my ruler out. And while I'm here, so I've cut that down to 6 inches, and it's just the width of the fat quarter. I'm going to cut this for binding because I'll need a piece to go over the top of the pocket, and I need to stitch that on before I attach the pocket. And so I'll cut a few strips of this while I'm here, and then I won't need to keep coming back over. Be sensible for once. And I'm just going to cut the binding at 2.5. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I leave it, cut it thinner at 2.25. But I think today I need to turn the ruler around, that's why it's not measuring properly, because the 1/2 inch is only on one side. There we go. It's a squint. I can't talk and cut. My tongue will be sticking out in a minute. But in case you're wondering, I do have a bin on the floor here. I'm not just chucking everything on the floor. I know people do that when they're on a live, but I do think it's easier just to have a bin, chuck it in the bin. And turn the ruler around, it's confusing myself. I've got my slide lock, that's what it's called, which I really like because it grips the fabric really well. And I'll probably need 4 strips, 1 for the pocket and another 4 to go round the edge of the sewing machine mat. But your sewing machine mat, you can make it as basic or as fancy as you want. So for this project, there's a fat quarter. You need 1 for the front. You need something similar size for the back. Whether you decide to use a fat quarter or just plain fabric. But I guess, so basically 2 fat quarters. And you need another one for the pocket. And you'll need 1 for the binding. So 4 fat quarters or a yard of fabric will make you a sewing machine mat. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more strip of fabric. And that's good to go. Somebody saying, I saw slide lock in my dreams. Sheila. I got this for my birthday last year, Sheila, when they started doing international shipping. I got the big one. And with hindsight, I should have got them both because of what the shipping was. But it's the amount of times that I would make mistakes when I was cutting and the ruler would slip and then I'd ruin my fabric. So having that doesn't slip is brilliant. Hi, Ellen. How are you? Good to see you. Plug you back in. And normally when I do binding, I sew it on by machine and then hand stitch the other side. But today I'll need to do them both by machine. So you'll see why I don't do them both by machine. So I'll have to stitch that down. And there's still a bit of a selvage edge there, but I'm just going to leave it and hope that the binding going the other way covers it. Hope in a prayer, as they say. Hi, Julie. I'm making a sewing machine mat. Sorry for anybody that came in late. To sit under my sewing machine, try and help with the noise a little bit because it does echo. I think it echoes a lot because my machine sits on a piece of kitchen worktop and it's empty underneath. So the noise does echo. So thought that should help. And it's a stitchy themed pockets or scissors. And then this fabric is got all sorts of sewing notions on it and things that you can see. And see what I mean when I said it's sort of multi-directional, but it's not, because if it's going this way, there's scissors that would be upside down. But if you were having it horizontal, vertically, you'd have to have it that way. So these scissors are going the right way. But you can get away with that way or that way, just to confuse everybody. I'm going to do it so it sits this way with the widest bit because of the size of my machine. But my last sewing machine that was narrower, the mat I had went that way with the fat quarter. But if I'm going to make a mat that sits under my machine, I might as well have one that looks nice and has a pocket on the front to store stuff. All the things that I lose. And I'm going to put on my foot with the blade on it for this, just to help. And I've lost my stitch guide thingamabob. You know, the magnetic seam guide, that's the word I'm looking for. So I'm going to turn you back round this one again so you can see the machine. Thank you, Mona, for putting in everybody's links. That's great. Need to move the needle over a bit, or it will be the biggest quarter-inch seam in history if I kept it where it was. I do still have a slightly bigger stitch length on this because it's going through all the layers. And if your machine is struggling with layers, go slow. The slower you go, the easier it is on your machine. I've seen it if it's been really thick bits of denim that I've been doing, actually doing it with a hand wheel, and it's made it through okay. So it's the first one done, and just tuck that over and stitch it down. And I think what I will do is I'm going to glue it down to hold it in place. I'm going to turn you back round again. You'll be getting motion sickness watching this. Hi, Linda. Good evening and welcome. So for everybody that's joined in, since I said this, I'm making a sewing machine mat. I'm going to do a series on sewing room accessories. And this is a nice, easy one to start with. I might not get the binding on tonight, but I should get everything else done. Just press that back. And I've got a glue stick here that I'm going to use. And just start folding that over. I think it might be easier if I glue this bit. You can use Elmer's, the school glue, the white glue. You know, the liquid stuff, that's what I meant, the PVA glue that's liquid. But I had this to hand, so I'm going to try with this first. I just want it to hold it enough till I get it stitched. It's just the point of the glue. It's just to hold it in place till you get it stitched. It just does make life easier. And you don't need a lot. And that's enough. I mean, it's not going to hold that. It's not going to hold it and win any prizes. But it is holding it over, which definitely makes life simpler. So this is going back under the machine and I'm going to stitch this down. I'm going to move you back round again. But using glue, the PVA glue is definitely better for that. And it is easier if you pop it under the iron to dry it, because then it won't gum up your needle. I'm going to move the needle over a bit. like about there, should do it. And I'm going to slow this down because it was going quite fast. Now it'll be going too slowly. What's this? It's not a bad speed. But yeah, if I wasn't trying to do this in a live, I would have hand stitched this down and then you don't see any stitching at all. And I much prefer how that looks. And I think what I will do, so you can see, there's the binding, and it's a bit wonky. That's why I don't like doing it. What I might do is when I've got this done is take that stitching out and hand stitch it in. We shall see. You can see that my binding was a bit wonky. But there we go, move you back round. We need to put this on. And I'm going to clip this in place. Get it the right way round. So the scissors match. And I'm going to clip it into place around the edges. And then you need to decide how big you want your pockets to be. And I've got big clips. I like big clips. I'm just going to match those edges up. If I wasn't using a fat quarter bundle, I probably would have made, if I was just using yardage, I probably would have made this pocket bigger, because then you can actually have spaces, like, you know, have a bump like this in your pocket, and then another bump if you want to give you bigger pockets, and then stitch it. But because it was a fat quarter bundle, I didn't have, well, I suppose I could have stitched pieces together, but I didn't want to do that. Use my giant clips. And then I'll get my ruler and draw some lines. Usually, and what I'm going to do when I can find my measuring tape, oh, here's one here. Not the one I was looking for, but it will do. Is, see just how big this is. And it's 21, it's just about 21 and a half, I would say, just over 21 and 3/4. So I don't want the first line going down the middle. I want a pocket in the middle. So we do a pocket at 9, a line at 9. This is when I've got to try and do maths at this time of night. My brain doesn't like it. It's too late for maths for me. Where did I put my pen? Here it is. And I've got a little ruler here. I'll set a line at 9. I'm going to draw that. And then if I do 9 from this side, and draw that. That's giving me a pocket right in the middle. That's not a bad size. And then I want a couple of smaller pockets, and you should be able to just maybe get a pen in, or I'm going to get a bigger ruler. A pen, or maybe do 2 inches. 1.5 feels a little bit too thin. If your pockets are fairly narrow, then it does help to keep things in place. But I do prefer working my way from the middle out like that. And if you decided that that wasn't the size of pocket you wanted, then Good Stuff Ninja, welcome. You've got your Quilt Mojo on for 2026, and you're going to have your space fully purged of junk scrap. Good for you. That's what I need to do. You can't, behind that camera, it's just full of shit. So that first pocket is 3 3/4 it works out at. So that's quite a big pocket. And then 2 on each side. And I think I'll do a few at 2, because most of the things that I would want to keep beside my sewing machine, I don't need big pockets for. Actually, what I think I'll do is a 2.5. 2, a 2.5, and then a 2 on each side. I quite like it having some symmetry. I'll just take that one away. 2, a 2.5, and then a 2 again. And what's left? Probably about another 2.5. But you can make these pockets any size you like and to suit you. So I'm just going to take that to machine, and I'm going to sew down these lines. Hi, Catherine. I can't see that on my iPad. That's why I'm like that, squinting. And the chat hasn't moved on this one, so it's way behind. A large wooden platter as a clapper for large blocks. See, that's a good idea, Chris. Nikki, you'll need to wear it one of the your new t-shirt at one of the Sew at Lisa's on a Thursday so that we can see it or take a picture. Hi, Shalom. Welcome. Heather, the worst bit about that, and the reason he got the joiners to cut it was because it's oak, it was such a thick piece. But if you've got the right tools, then cutting it is great. You know, and get somebody else to cut it, then. Bye, Julie. So, yes, I'm going to do these lines. And I'm going to switch my foot back. And I'm going to turn this round again. And sorry I didn't warn you in advance. So anybody that gets motion sickness is probably about to throw up. and just going to sew on the line up and down. Start it. I'm going to move that back over a bit so it matches up with the little red triangle here. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little triangle. Can you see it? Probably not on my foot that you can line the needle up with. I'm putting the needle down to check. I'm going to go forward a little bit. Right. Now what I am going to do, and I've probably got too close to the edge, is turn around and go back up. I'm not going to back stitch because back stitching, I always get a bird's nest. I don't like it. I'd rather just turn around and sew back again, and I can do that much neater. And then flip it back round. There we go. I'm going too far. It's come off. That one. I'm going a bit squint. And then when I've got all these lines sewn, then I'll do the binding round the edge. So it's not a particularly difficult thing to do. The bit that takes the longest, actually, I think, is quilting the fabric. And you don't need to turn this backwards and forwards, but I do think the double seam just helps with the pockets. So if there's stuff going in and out the pockets, you could just back stitch a bit from the top, but I don't like that. I'd rather have the full thickness with the thread. But you can see it's, it's not hard. And these are all quite flat. I'm going to make the one in the middle have the little bit of give in it. So there is a little bit of extra. So I'm going to just align that up. there and have it on this pocket. What's everybody saying in the chat? Mary G, you've made some of these mats. Pre-quilted fabric. Oh, that's a good idea. Hi, Beth and Christy. Girls Are Us. You should watch them. They're on a Sunday. They're absolutely hilarious. If you want good fun and a good laugh, then I highly recommend Beth and Christy on their tours. They're out and about and they do fun stuff. Hi, Deb. How are you feeling? I hope you're feeling better. You looked dreadful on your show last night. You looked like you should have been in your bed. You looked like you were coming down with the flu or something. Proper flu, not just a cold flu. You looked really unwell. I hope you're feeling better. Hi, Sherry. Tiramisu for dinner. That's the result. Who's lucky enough to be having pudding for dinner? It is a dessert, Heather, but there's nothing wrong with having a dessert for dinner on a Saturday night. It's like cereal for dinner when you can't be bothered cooking. Cereal for dinner can be really, really good. Two more to go. And then I'll get these lines off. And then it's just a case of just got the binding to go on. And Heather and I are involved in Donna's Back to Basics 101 quilting that we're doing. And there will be dates for that coming up throughout the year. And it will be, each person in the thing will be doing it on their own channel. But there's lots of people doing it. There's Donna, obviously, it's her channel. Donnell's doing it. Heather's doing it. I'm doing it. Amy DeMont's doing it. So Becca's doing it. And Brenda, Conquering Mount Scratmore's doing it. So lots of big guns there. I nearly started that at the wrong end. So last one. And then it's just the binding. Iron off these pen marks. But yeah, if as Mary said, she used, I think it was Mary anyway, pre-quilted fabric, that's a great idea if you can get pre-quilted fabric. And that's going to be hidden by the binding, so if there is a bird's nest there, it's going to be okay. It's at the top, I don't want a bird's nest in the back. Pre-quilted fabric would be great. So quick and easy. And then I should do one on each end. I haven't done each end. And along the bottom probably as well. Sometimes my stupidity. No, I'm not going to do one each end because I'll get it when I get the binding. That'll be fine. I never put much in the end pockets anyway. I'm going to turn you back round. I'm going to iron this off. And then you'll get the gist of kind of how it looks. Iron's gone to sleep, so I need to wait till it heats up a little bit. And snip all these threads. Hate threads. Hate threads. That's the one thing I don't like. You know, have a stitch cutter, thread cutter on your sewing machine. It shouldn't leave you with these big bits to snip off. There's all the threads on the back as well. Yep. I shouldn't have this on my knee where you can't see it. That's all these silly things I do. I have got threads there. But I do. Yeah. So, and yeah, I didn't realise you were squint, sorry. You would all be watching it like that at home. I'm just pressing in the edge of the iron onto the seam to get the pen out the way under the stitches. There we go. So all I need to do now to finish this is the binding, and it will sit very nicely under my machine, so kind of like that, and that'll hang over the edge. And then I can put all the stuff in the pockets. And what I'll do is I can do the binding and show you the finished thing next week. But apart from, so it doesn't take you long. If you were doing it and you weren't having to speak and show people, you would be able to do it much quicker. Thank you, Candice. Yes, Heather, Kelly Quilts is on it too. And Sean Zip is on it. The guy who sews is on it. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Flicky Chicky. So, yes, this is first step in the quilting. Sewing room accessories is a sewing machine mat. And then, I don't know how many of you have got light boxes. I don't know if people would be interested in a light box carrier or not. What I might do is make the one I was going to make for my machine and show you and tell you how I did it rather than you watch me do it. Because sometimes watching these things is boring. But yeah, that's I'll hold it that way, you can see it better. The gist of it, it's like that with the pockets. But my room's a pale pink, so it kind of matches the room. And then some of the stuff I did earlier, when I first started, I did a needle book and I did a little dish and things, and they were in this fabric. There's the needle book that I did. This is a peachy version of it that was in the Fat Quarter bundle. Did a little needle book that's got magnetic closure that way, and pretty pins are in it. The little flower pins I did one week. And that little dish, and they're really easy to make. I might make some of them because they're great for clips and things. So maybe next week will be a surprise, but I will have this mat finished, she says. Famous last words. Yes, the dish drying mats. You do have a light box that could use a case. Yes, I think it would be easier if I did it. Hi, Terry. But the dish drying mats, you don't really get them here. I know the ones you've seen, I've seen them all over YouTube that people get in the dollar store. You don't really get them here. And if you do, they're not cheap. Mind you, quilting cotton's not cheap, so there's not much in it, I suppose. I think the thing is that because they're already quilted, kind of the dish drying mats make it easier. But yeah, I've watched a lot of those. Well, Nikki, I just got a light box from Amazon, and it was a proper branded one. The company sold them, but Amazon, it was cheaper on Amazon. It was direct from the company, which makes no sense to me. And I think it's like, I don't know, because what you call your paper sizes is different in the US. Here it's A3, which is like 2 sheets, 2 letter size sheets together. But it's got a clear cutting mat on it, and it's magnetic as well. It came with magnets to hold the cutting mat in place, so I can cut directly on it with the clear cutting mat. And it wasn't that expensive. It wasn't like a Caterpillar one, because Caterpillar don't sell to the UK. They said if you contacted them, they would, but I didn't know that. But on their website, it just said that they didn't sell internationally. And on Amazon and things, it was, or from somewhere like Fat Quarter Shop, the postage was just horrendous for them. So that might be the next thing, is a light box carry case. But also, you don't want them to get broken. You want them to be protected. Because I don't know about you, but mine sits out the way most of the time, because when I had it sitting flat, I put stuff on top of it. Yes, Blue Rooster does make, Mary, she does make a lot with drying mats. That's probably where I've seen it, because I watched Blue Rooster. She does some really good stuff. And I've got another thing next week to show you that's quick and cheap and easy. And then next weekend, Norman, he goes away skiing. He's away for a week skiing with his brothers. That goes every year with his brothers last week in January. So he's been warned he better have no injuries that stop us flying to the US. And will not be a happy bunny. I'm getting excited about QuiltCon and looking forward to meeting everybody. So anyway, I've rabbited on enough. I've gone a little bit over. I'll have this finished next week to show you, and it's still squint. I've done it again. That's it. This is just sits on a big bendy arm. So you can, this one, so you can move it. See, that's why it's going boing. You can move it backwards and forwards, but it also means that it does end up like that sometimes. So I do apologise. So yes, next week I'll have this finished, and I'll have other sewing room accessories to show you. And then I'll work at a cutting mat. And hopefully nobody will do a tutorial on one before I get to it. That'll be somebody will have one up this week or something. Then you can watch theirs and I can watch theirs, and it'll save me doing it. It's, Nikki, it would be great if you were there, but I fully get it. It's not the price of well, it is for me of getting there, but for you, it's not the price of getting there. It's the price of accommodation. It's ridiculous. I know what we're paying for 5 days, 5 nights, I should say, because we're staying the Sunday night. We're staying the night before. We're staying Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Yeah, 5 nights. And it's extortionate what we're paying. So I shall see you all next week. it would be really great if you liked and subscribed, if you haven't already subscribed. But if you could give me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate that. I'm nearly not far off 500 subscribers. So, yeah, if you could give me a like, that would really be great. And I'll see you all next week. Good evening. Good night. I'm tired. You can tell, can't you? Rabbiting on like an idiot. Okay, good night, everybody.